right? Or ordinal data. You also want to collect a ordinal data. So, okay. So there are two types of data in research. Whatever you collect, it could be formed in any one of the compartments. It could be a metric data or it could be a non-metric data. Okay. Remember, you also studied, the study is going to be a cross-sectional design, it could be an experimental design, and it could be a longitudinal research design. So all research design, wherever there is a self-reporting, that you report about your job satisfaction, you report about your FDP satisfaction, where there is self-reporting. So you have to consider something called common method bias. That is also an issue across. Your reviewers are very keen to know what is the common method bias, how you tackled it, and how you tackled during the questionnaire development stage, and how you tackled after the data collection or statistical control. So a lot of issues are across when you collect data. Remember, you all have to have a data analysis plan in advance. In advance, you must have a data analysis plan, and then that plan should tell you what is that you do from A to Z. Again, I'm telling you, it's not there in the textbook. Then you'll always have a surprise element in the data when you do a data analysis. Surprise element is always available. What is that? I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. Sometimes, sometimes the researcher comes and say that. I think, where is the noise coming? It is this Professor Neha, not muted. I don't know where. I think all of you please mute. Srividya. Srividya. Somewhere noise coming. Okay.
You can mute from your end, sir.
Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah. Okay. Right. So you have issues like common method bias. You have to plan all these things in advance. For example, you have to plan all these things when you design your study, when you design your questionnaire. Okay. Okay, let me take you to the PowerPoint I have. Yeah, so I'll be telling you in a nutshell. I'll be telling to you on what are the different methods of data analysis. How should be your data? How to tackle the common method bias? All these things I'll be talking to you. Okay. Right. All I'll be talking to you. Right. Now the first one. Now the agenda today is we will be discussing about data analysis, then how to write the method section and how to write the result section. Right. Now I'll start with. So this is what the agenda. So once you complete this stream, I don't know when I'm going to complete. I'm not going to take any. No, I'm going to not going to talk this fast so that I want to complete. I want you to all of you to understand. That's what the purpose of this my session is. Now you are in a kind of position that you are thinking in terms of you build all the theories. Maybe sometimes you take 1 year, sometimes if it's a PhD work, you take 2 to 3 years. So you have built a theory. Now you want to test the theory. So you are not in this left side. You are on the right side now. So all the hypotheses written, conceptual framework is developed, and then a conceptual framework is developed, hypothesis written, framework is written, all these things are written. Now you also collected data. Now you have collected data. Now you want to test the theory. So you are really have butterfly in your stomach, whether whatever I put effort in build the theory, that particular effort is really I want to see what is the result. So that is the position you are. So you are all these days, what is that you're discussing about is on theory building. Now I'm going to take you to theory testing, right? So what is theory testing? I want to see do the data analysis in very plain language. I want to do the data analysis. Now, if I do the data analysis, I have two options, whether I do a univariate analysis or a multivariate analysis. Univariate analysis is, I'm thinking in terms of single variable or single question. Multivariate analysis, I have a multiple variable, right? So I have a univariate analysis in place. I want to have a multivariate analysis in place. If I want to check my skewness, so it is, I can check what is called as the univariate skewness, right? I want to check the mean of the item, standard deviation of the item. All these are said to be univariate analysis, right? Univariate analysis. Oh, okay. So univariate analysis. So this univariate analysis, as you have to begin your analysis, univariate analysis. So there is no order which one to start first. But what is important is you have to check the mean, how the standard deviation. More important with mean and standard deviation is the skewness, is the kurtosis. All this you have to check, and the values are identified, right? Anybody can say what is the skewness? Is there anybody knows what is the skewness? Anybody has any idea of skewness?
It
Yeah.
is tilting
Can
of
we
the
say that
data
how
towards
the
one side, either towards the left or right.
Yes, very good. I
how
think
the data is scattered, whether it is scattered around the central value or on?
exactly. Whether it is right skewed or left skewed. Yeah.
Yes.
If it is not skewed, then what it is called?
Normal.
Normal data.
It is normal. Okay.
Normal
Exactly.
distribution.
Normal distribution. So you
Normal
require, why you want to have a normal distribution?
To avoid biases, possibly.
Okay.
And as far as possible, the data should not have any outliers, like, too bizarre scores.
Okay.
So
Okay.
in a skewed distribution, the representation of the population is not right.
Okay. Exactly. Okay.
And
Yes.
sir, many statistical tests are parametric. Many assume that the data is normal. Many
Okay.
statistical tests assume that.
Okay.
Skewed, it may be greater than or less than 0. If less than, then we could be consider it a negative, and if it is greater than, then we could be consider it as a positive. If I'm not
Exactly.
wrong.
Exactly. Okay. I think all of you are right. Some said the skewness is negative, positive. Some said one important point is all the parametric tests require the distribution to be normal. For example, if I want to do the t-test, for example, a simple t-test, the assumption to be followed is that the data should follow a normal distribution, right? Now come to practical. This is all theory stuff. You learn from statistics from many faculties. But if you collect from in social science, for example, you hardly get anywhere a data which is a perfect normal distribution. This is a problem we have, practical problem. When you collect the data, you see one data, take one particular question and see whether it's formal, whether it comes in a normal distribution, a bell-shaped curve. We have not seen that. We have not seen very sporadic incident, maybe 1 or 2 or 1 or 5 out of 100. So many a place we end up what is called as a skewed distribution. Now, when the reality is that that's a skew distribution, only you are getting it in a social science, the extent I know. So what is that we can think of? We can think of what is the level of skewness. Okay, what is the critical ratio it has to follow? It is the critical level it has to follow. Some under the impression, some in the sense, some groups are under the impression they are very conservative, and they say the skewness must be a -1 +1 level. Fine, I can carry on the analysis because perfectly getting it is skewness perfectly. What is perfectly? A 0. SK is 0. That is skewness level is 0. Is indication, or I can infer as a perfect normal distribution that you will never get in a data analysis, right? So what is that you read? It's going to be not really useful many a times in a real-time data analysis. You are allowed now. You are allowed to have a skewness level. Some conservative statistician, they say that yeah, you can have up to -1 to +1. They are given a range. So if that is there, okay, it's not an issue. But there are some other group also says, slight, which is very liberal. They also says the skewness level can be -3 to +3. Right? So yeah. So what we learned is no, we need to edit as well that we don't get it when you have a real-time data that if you have you will always normally have a skewed distribution, and then still you have to perform some parametric test, right? But there are studies also said if your data is large, you don't have to worry. And somebody is also talked to me just now that outlier, yeah, removal of outlier also it increases the it increases the critical ratio of skewness. So all things are possible. Okay. Remember one more thing I want to tell you regarding skewness. So, a very simple topic. If you go to the Harebrooke says that, I quote Harebrooke here. It says that if you see, for example, you collected 20 items for your study, 20 questions, you have collected data, and each one you find out that the skewness is within the threshold level. Say the threshold. So I am say I'm very conservative, so I want my threshold level is -1 to +1. If the skewness is falls within this level, then I say I'm happy, right? Assume that all the 20 items I have in my study, I have collected some quantity of data. I found out the skewness level falls within the threshold level. Okay. So I am very comfortable, but remember, I'm going to take you to one more level. There is something called multivariate normality, multivariate kurtosis. I think I'm advising, please mute all of you.
क्या चीज रिटर्न का यार हो नहीं पा रहा है, मैं कल करना था, थक गया था आज, लेकिन करूंगा, बताओ.
I'll wait for him to complete. Sorry.
हाँ कोई नहीं आया यार, बस एक फैकल्टी है, मैं हूँ.
Shwebhendu sir, please mute yourself.
Oh, sir, mute sir, please, all of you.
अभी कहाँ हो?
डैडी मम्मी का वैक्सीनेशन करा के वो लोग आ गए हैं और जाएंगे पेशेंट पढ़ाने, बहुत लेट हो जाता है, 12 बज जाता है.
I think it's over. I think I'll start. So remember, there is something called a multivariate normality, right? Because our statistical test we use in research predominantly we use hardly less number of times ANOVA. So what we do is we use multivariate statistics like factor analysis, multiple regression, conjoint analysis. More often we now use structural equation modeling. We now use path analysis, confirmatory factor analysis. So all these things require what is called as multivariate normality. Okay, so we were talking about univariate normality, and now I'm talking to you on multivariate normality. So what is the transition? The point I want to make, important point I want to make here, if your that individual items or individual questions have reasonable or good enough univariate normality, then it is not necessary that it should have a multivariate normality. I'll repeat it. This is an important point. Even if your items, you can just take a SPSS, easy for you to conduct a univariate analysis over. But the point is, we are doing majority of the studies we perform a multivariate statistical tool like SEM or multiple regression, where we want to follow a multivariate normality. So even if your items, all of them have a univariate normality, it is not necessary that the same item will have a multivariate normality. Is there any question here? So if I want to do any multivariate,
So can you explain with an example, please?
Yes. So yes. No, I have a small study which around 3 variables. So 3 variables. So it's around 18 items. I have collected data from say around 150 respondents. Okay. So each 15 questions are available. Assume that imagine that the 15 questions are available in 15 columns. And each column or each variable I am testing for skewness. The skewness is very close to 0. Assume that's 0.5, minus 0.5, very close to 0. Assume that for all the 15 items collected, all are very close to 0, which means I ensured that the univariate normality very likely is there. So, right? But even though there is a univariate normality, there is no guarantee with the same set of items. Because it has got a univariate normality, not necessary it must have a multivariate normality. Hope now it is better, clear? So even if you have a univariate normality, you are not sure that the same data will have a multivariate normality. Why we have to talk? Yeah, I saw somebody talked in the morning that you require to assess all these assumptions before going into the statistical test. Right? One such important one is a normality. Okay. Multivariate normality, if you want to check, you cannot do it with SPSS directly. If you want to do with SPSS, what you should do is you have to have a code, take the code in the editor, then run. So there is no inbuilt function available for multivariate normality. So what if you want, you can do only with the code and bring the code inside and do it. Yeah, that is one way. Don't worry about it. If the codes are readily available, you just have to copy paste it. Readily available in the public domain, you just have to copy paste it. The other one, if you know little of Amos, I will tell you where it is available in Amos. If you know Amos, you can do a multivariate normality, right? The multivariate normality you have in Amos, just note down, it's called Mardias coefficient. Mardias, Mardias. I'll repeat it. So multivariate normality, you require all these things because you need to write your methods. So they'll ask you why you want to have a SEM. You can say that no, I have conducted the multivariate normality. I found out it is greater, so I moved on from not to Amos. I moved to PLSM. Okay, I will show you. Remember, I will show you. If I forget, just remember. Just tell you where it is available in Amos. Okay, so the test that Amos has to test the multivariate normality is what is called as Mardias coefficient, MARDA. So Mardias is a person. If you go to Google Scholar, he has written a lot of articles on statistical applications, other things. So his domain. Okay. So Mardias coefficient. What is ideally Mardias coefficient? It should be less than 2. Okay. Mardias coefficient is a coefficient. So that coefficient value must be 2. But again, there is an issue. Hardly we find anything like 2. It's very difficult to have. If, for example, if I want to have one possibility could be I collect 500 data. I remove the outlier one after the other, and what I do, I remove the outlier. I will remove say 5, then note down what is the critical ratio. My critical ratio initially will be 30. Then I note down in a pad that I remove items. I remove case number 151, 201. I remove the outliers. Then again I check what is the multivariate normality. It from 25 it will come to 22, 23. So it's what I want to tell you. It's a 2 to 3 hours work. Why? Because I want to bring that Mardias coefficient or multivariate tool coefficient, Mardias coefficient, as close as 2. Okay, any data you collect, you don't get that much. You will get 35, 25, 40 is what you get. Now you have to remove the outlier. You cannot remove as a wholesale. What I'll do is we'll do a step-by-step approach. We remove 5, 6 and see what happens. Then again we remove 5, 6. Then again. So it's a process we carry out in order to bring down the level of Mardias coefficient. So we will not do say 15, 20 at a time. Okay. And remember, once you do it, for example, you are removed a particular respondent who falls in the row 150. If you remove this row, the previous person who is in 151 will come there. So you have to have all these things, in the mind. Otherwise, you will end up in an error. You must always have a master copy of data. Do not touch the data. Whenever you do the analysis, take a copy from the master copy and do it. Data collection. I'm just collecting from Amazon metric. I'm just in the process. Now I want around 150. Now I have collected 120. It's going on. I spend around 15,000 rupees. If I want to have around 400 data, I have to spend somewhere around 30,000 rupees. So data collection itself is expensive. What I'm telling you is very nominal amount. There are data collection I know worth in lakhs. So whatever you have collected as a final one, keep it aside as a master copy. I name them as a master copy and keep it separately. All these are my practical experience I'm talking about. Not there in the book. And whatever I do, like this deletion of cases in order to bring down the Mardias coefficient, I take a copy and do it. Right? Now I'll stop it. You can ask me any questions. Is there anything you want to know? Tell me, sir.
Yes, sir. There is any method for converting the non-metric data into the metric data for the application of more statistical tools?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I think I will answer for all of you. When we teach our marketing research, we'll ask our students to collect data as metric as possible. When you are given an option to collect metric data or non-metric data, you collect metric data, which means simply, if you don't understand, Likert scale data. So it is possible to bring from a higher level data to a lower level data. What is that? From a Likert scale, interval scale data, I can bring them to a categorical variable data. But remember, all scholars remember, you cannot do the ulta. Vice versa is not possible. So the basic of research is, as and when possible, collect metric data, Likert scale data, or a ratios data. I can convert them into categorical data. For example, in my study, I have collected a experience ad as I put a simple line, asked me in my hard copy questionnaire, what is the year experience in terms of years and months? Okay, so to 11. So then I converted into decimal value, the experience. Many times you see that experience are asked as a categorical variable. You 0 to 5, 5 to 10. Even if you put 0 to 5, there must be some basis why you put 0 to 5. Why not 0 to 6? Right? So I think based on the question, I suggest all of you, if possible, if you have an option of collecting metric versus non-metric data, do collect only metric data, which means ratio data or a Likert scale data. I can convert them into a lower level data. But for example, if I collect as a categorical data, then it, for example, income, for example, so I can collect as a category, right? Say less than 5 lakhs per annum, 5 to 10 lakhs. So I collect, even though I can collect the same data as a ratio scale data. But if I collect as 0 to 5 and 5 to 10 lakhs, 10 to 15 lakhs, I'm collecting as a categorical data. Okay, so it's better to collect as a metric data. Then it is possible for me to convert them as a non-metric data. Vice versa is not possible. So advise all of you who knows this, do not collect as a metric data. And if you have a metric data, as somebody said, there are a lot of possibilities of statistical calculations. I can apply a lot of statistical tests on the data. I hope I have answered. Okay.
Yes,
Any
sir.
other
Thank you,
question?
sir.
Any other question?
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, one by one.
Sir, related to this query, now what happens if you collect, as you said, I am using income category, some say 5,000 to 10,000.
Okay.
And what could be the possible implications, if you can say, rather than collecting whether it's 6,000, 4,500? how does it help in my research? If you can just throw some light on it.
Yeah, sure. Say, for example, take the case of, your income. Income is a very sensitive issue because normally people don't tell their income correctly. So I'm not taking that particular variable. Instead, I take experience, job experience. Okay. I can collect the job experience, say for 0 to 5, okay, 5 to 10, and 10 to 15 and greater than. If I collect, I'm collecting as a categorical variable. So 0 to 5 is a category. Okay, similarly 5 to 10 is another category, and 15 to 20 is another category. So I collect as a category. So I'm not, and instead, if I am not collecting like this, I have the same job experience and I'm collecting as just a one hyphen and asking the respondent to fill what is the job experience. He can fill as 13, 12, 5, 0.5 if he experienced only 6 months in the company. So different possibilities are available. Okay, the one I'm collecting like this, just experience. It's a ratio scale data, very higher level of data where statistical manipulations are. Why it is a ratio data? I can start anybody who filling up the respondent can start as 0. If somebody joined on that day when I'm going to administer, the experience is 0. So I have a 0 base and build on that, which means the scale is ratio scale. So ratio scale are amenable for any kind of statistical manipulation. So it's wonderful if I collect the data instead of a categories. I hope it is clear, or you want some more light on it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, for instance, when say I have collected a questionnaire based on say the employee's perception towards leadership.
Okay.
So when I collected the way you said, somebody has given 11 years, 2 months, and so on.
Okay.
Then my probably perception could be, from 0 to say 3 years. Later I put a clause saying that 0 to 3 years, they may not have so much of an interaction with the management team.
Okay.
So I put it as 0 to 3 as one category, and then 3 to 6 as another category, 6 to 12.
Yes.
So later I could segregate.
Yes,
then that was for the pilot study. Then I thought, again I have to convert. So let me give the directly, as you said, interval scale.
Okay.
Instead of me going and doing this, because anyway, I am going to categorize it in that way.
Yes.
So, so correct me, which way could actually help me? One is after I collect, because I'm going to again categorize and then, run an impact, because the person with having highest years of experience with that firm, he would have had more interaction with the management. Hence, my approach could be, okay, I'm just looking at what is his perception towards the his leadership skills. How is he assessing his employees, assessing his leadership skills? So in this case, which one would you advise and why?
Is your come again in a crisp? You tell me the question in 2 lines.
So when I'm collecting the experience, like the way you said, like a ratio scale.
Okay.
Vis-a-vis, I'm collecting. First time when I did a pilot study, I collected that way.
Okay.
Later, I realized that instead of collecting on a ratio scale, when I'm going for the sample, I could use an interval scale.
Okay. That's categorical scale. Categorical scale.
Categorical scale.
Okay.
Yeah, categorical scale.
Okay.
So, what is the difference if I do it in the first manner or second manner?
Okay. Now,
is it going to impact my study in what way?
Now, for example, the particular variable you said, what is that you're going to use it? Okay. For example, I'll tell you I'll throw you some example. One possibility could be you can use that variable, job experience, where I have used as a moderator. Okay. If you use as a moderator, then for example, if you use a moderator, then quantitative variable is welcome. What is the quantitative variable? Like you collected, the experience in terms of years, not as a category. You can do a kind of moderation analysis. So your question I can answer if you say what kind of analysis I'm going to make with the categories I've developed or I've collected data. Okay. So depend upon the place you use it.
Exactly, exactly. So I was trying to test the interaction of the employees with the management team and how they are perceiving the leadership qualities of the leader. So I
Okay.
have some leadership scales, and then on a Likert scale,
So
I have collected.
you already collected now, all the data are over.
I did a pilot study. Now I'm going to go for this.
I have a suggestion. If you want to collect, do what you did in the pilot study. Collect here as a ratio scale data.
Okay.
Okay. Then if you have a ratio scale data, there is something called when you talked about interaction. I think some of you I want to tell you that if you want to do a moderation, you can do a median split. You can take them into, for example, you take them all the respondents' experience. You take them in ascending order. Find out the mid value or the median value. Then there is two categories. So that is what I want to tell you, how to convert those metric data into categorical data. But categorical to metric, it is not possible. So I have a median, I have a ascending order data. And then what I'll do, I'll take a median, I will divide this into two. One is before the median and one is after the median. So I can code them as 1, 2 or 1, 0. 0 is before the median, 1 is after the median, and then I can run the moderation analysis. I can call them as this is a method called median split method.
How does it actually help, sir?
You can
How does the median split?
It tells you there are two categories. One is less experience, the median below is less experience, median above is more experience. Then you can say how this relationship changes based on the less experience and the more experience. So that is what is called as, we use median split in moderation analysis. That is possible.
Okay.
If you got straight away also, you can use straight away also without the median split also possible. That again depend upon how you want to write your paper.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, tell me.
Yeah, you were talking about univariate normality as well as multivariate normality. Now, my question is, for analysis of your data, is it necessary that you have to go for both of them? And second question is, if you find that you have an univariate normality, but you do not have the multivariate normality, can you still go for parametric tests?
Okay, I think why I want to sensitize this to you, because one reason is you must know that is normality is not only for univariate. There is something called multivariate normality. I want all of you to sensitize. There is something called multivariate normality. It's also available in AMOS. Okay, if you don't have, for example, I'll come to your question straight. If you don't have a multivariate normality, what you can think of doing an outlier removal. Okay, that will bring down the critical ratio of multivariate normality. So what you do, 5, 10 cases, even though the sample size is less, don't worry about it. If you have a good data, it will give you good results. Okay, not the number of samples. If you have a good data, quality data, 250, 300 is good enough for a study, good paper, right? So you can remove the outlier and see that multivariate normality is come to somewhere a meaningful shape. So having said that, I want to tell you, ideally it is 2. There is one very famous method specialist called Bentler, Eugen Bentler, B-E-N-T-L-E-R, Bentler, B-E-N-T-L-E-R. Just note down his work. Bentler, I think, I don't remember, 2007 paper. He said that, see, the references are very important because when you get into this, you understand the difficulty. Bentler says that it is very difficult to get 2. Why it is 2? Again, I'll tell you. You all remember T statistics 1.96. So I'm saying conveniently 2. You all study the T statistics significance is 2. So 1.96. So I don't want to confuse you by saying 1.96. So I say 2. So ideally it should be 2. Then Bentler says that less than 2. So Bentler says if it is 7, it is meaningful and practical. So you require, because it is very difficult. I tell you what is the practical problem. You keep on deleting. You paid money. You also have a pinch in your mind. So 150, 300 it is there. Now it comes to 200 or 225. 75 data is gone. So you require to have some kind of support, citation support. So he says, not 2, 7 is okay. Bentley studies. Your critical ratio 7 is enough. Okay, okay. You don't have to have 2, less than 2. You can have up to 7.
Sir,
You can have up to 7. Remember, again, you can ask, somebody can ask me, sir, what will I do if I don't get 7? I'm getting 15, 20. If it is that the case, there is one more author called Barrett, B-A-R-R-E-T-T. B-A-R-R. He says, if you do a SEM analysis, suppose that you are doing a SEM analysis with moderation or process macro, a 200 plus sample is good enough. So you don't have to worry much about normality.
Sir, may I?
This is like, no, I cannot say that 2 plus, in research there's a problem. We won't be able to say 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. No, there are ways you can plug the hole. Yeah, tell me.
Sir, my question is very basic one. Sir,
Yeah.
what kind of data can come under non-metric data?
Sure.
Sir, all categorical data are non-metric data?
All categorical data is a non-metric. Yes. Yes. So for example, you collect gender, for example, theta. Gender is a categorical variable. Income, you can collect as a categorical variable or metric data. So I am advising theta to collect as a metric data. Don't try to collect as a categorical data. Why I am telling you that if at all you want as a categorical data, capture them as a metric data, then use frequency distribution, visual binding in SPSS and convert them as metric data into non-metric data. But I am going to tell you again, vice versa is not possible. So it's better to collect a metric data than convert them into categorical data. Clear, Hita? Thank
sir,
you.
one more doubt, sir.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, yeah. Please tell. Yeah.
Sir, actually, you were mentioning about this testing for normality in multivariate and univariate.
Yes.
So I want to understand is if in this removal of outliers in secondary data, what do we do? Time series data.
See, all the data which are amenable to a statistical test, the statistical test will tell you that you have to follow some assumptions that you need to follow, whether it is a time series data or a data you collected, cross-sectional data, whatever data is. Okay, clear? You also have, for example, I'm telling you, sales of certain items during the pandemic is going to be an outlier. That you have to remove it. If you were collecting a data for 50 years or 25 years, yeah, tell me.
But won't that affect the results, sir? I mean,
but again, if my study results should be consistent. That's all. See, the particular scenario will happen only for say 6 months in 25 years. Then I can drop as it is. Use of keeping. Okay.
So in literature, I have also seen scholars transforming the data.
Yeah, I'll come to that. I'll come to that. So I'm not going to open the PPT.
Log transformation.
Yes. So that's a problem with skewness. So what you should do is, again, what is practical advice? I'm telling you all these are practical advice. You go to Handbook, I think 3rd chapter, data, examining your data. He says that you have a skewness issue. One way of removing the skewness issue is to transform the data. Commonly available transformations are logarithmic transformation, log 10 transformation, okay, natural logarithm transformation. That's a very common. I'm telling you very honestly in front of all of you, I don't know what is the possible result. I'm just doing trial and error method. I see what is that. I convert them into log 10. So you go to your particular transform data. You can transform that data into log 10. Again, I'll see what is the skewness. Surprisingly, I have also seen in few times, that the skewness original data is better. The skewness of transformation data is more. That is also I have seen my practical experience. But many a times you can see there's a large reduction in the skewness. Okay, this is one method. I think Dr. Vishnu I found answer. The other thing, Vishnu, is you can also do what is called as cube root transformation. We call them as cube root transformation. I am doing this one after the other in order to see. The objective is I want to reduce the skewness. Anything which I reduce, skewness is reduced, I will take as the data for my further analysis. the original data has been kept aside. This is so. Then I can think of. I can also think of square root transformation. There are 4 or 5 methods are available of transformation. So you all this. What is the idea? The idea is to reduce the skewness. Okay. Okay. If it is reduced, then my objective is over. I'm telling you, this is work. 99% this will work. 99%. But I won't be able to ensure you that it will come within the range of -1 to +1. But there will be a sizable reduction of skewness if you do this data transformation.
Sir, suppose in my questionnaire, I have multiple scales for independent variable and dependent variable.
Yes.
Now I have to do the skewness test for all of them.
Yes, all of them you have to do. All of them. Now, I think Sujata also prompted me another thing. So when you develop a questionnaire, have first your dependent variable, then the independent variable.
Yes.
So I want to capture the respondent. All is is very fresh in the beginning. So I want to capture him first. So you always have to put a dependent variable in your questionnaire.
I have done that.
Yeah.
I have done.
And remember one more thing. The one more practical. You've not been taught in any book. Do not collect data for one dependent variable. All of you here. Do not have as a you need to have one more dependent variable, because in research, particularly, the way the people respond to questions, the lot of method bias. So what I suggest you not to have one dependent variable, have 2 dependent variables.
Okay.
Okay. This is just for safe side. And not only, I want to tell you, I think off the record, that we collect data and publish 2 to 3 studies. So I hope there's no editor here.
No, sir. This was new and this was very thought-provoking.
Okay. So remember that all of you, don't collecting data is very, very difficult. It's not in the sense, our people, they say your friend will say, I'll do it. But the way you do it, I'm telling you, most often, or 50-60% of the time, it's not going to be useful, the data, the junk data. So the problem with the junk data is, this alone is not going to create problem. This is going to mix with the good data and the entire system is spoiled. So you have to be very careful in deleting certain items. You have to be really, not really throw it away. If you feel somebody has written, there are some people who have written 5, 5, 5, 5. There are some people who say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So all these do not have any consideration. Remember, if you add this, it's going to spoil the entire milk. It's going to spoil the entire research. So when you collect data, remember, try to collect 2 data. We publish 2 to 3 papers with 1 set of data. It is not perfectly correct, but still we do it because it's very difficult practically to collect data.
So what is your relevance of differencing in data, sir?
I think please rephrase the question, please.
So what is your relevance of differencing?
What difference in the sense? I'm not able to understand.
Actually, we use differencing for remove trends and all.
Okay. No, I have not worked much on that. Okay. I'm also not able to understand the questions. You can write in the chat box. I will tell. Right. So now I think is any other questions with that? So you are in the preliminary analysis. You understand what is skewness. Okay. What is kurtosis? You know what is normality. Okay. There are 2 tests. There are 2 tests. One is we call them as a test for normality. One is called KS statistics. It's called Kolmogorov-Smirnov test. It's a Russian name. It's available in SPSS. So I want to test whether a particular question, particular data, or a particular question data, or a particular item data is normal or not. Then I can perform what is called as the KS statistics. Right? The one way. The other way, people say, and many authorities says that you can also perform Shapiro's milk test. Okay, there are only 2 tests I know, to my knowledge. Okay, so what is the test? The skewness is not a test. Skewness is only I can infer whether normality.
Which was the second test?
Second name is called Shapiro. SHAPIRO.
Okay,
Shapiro-Wilks test. It's also available in SPSS. Okay. people say that Shapiro-Wilks test perform better than K statistics. So you can use any one of the same. Okay. So please understand that I am talking about a test. I also talked about skewness. Skewness is a way of inferring statistics, but the test R is a confirmatory thing whether skewness is there, normality is there or not. Okay, you understand? Skewness is a way of inferring the data, and tests are a kind of confirmatory whether the normality is present or not. Okay, you can do both. You can do both and see how your data data performs all the tests. What is the result like? Right. So any other question?
Sir, just to add to your point.
Yes, please.
So may I? Yeah.
Yeah, please.
So I agree with you that Shapiro-Wilk and Kolmogorov case test are the two popular tests for checking normality that's available in popular softwares like SPSS, Minitab, etc.
Yes.
But I think there are many other tests also, sir. Like
what is that?
Lilliefors
test, it does
Karma Bond myself.
Yeah. You're right.
Anderson Darling test.
Yes,
all
there are other.
Yeah.
Now tests are available. Yeah, I understand. Yes. Thank you, Vishnu. Yeah, right.
Vishnu sir, if you are right in the chat box, it's very helpful.
Yes.
Sure. Actually, I can share a paper that was published in
Yes,
Taylor and
thank
Francis,
you.
which deals with all these tests.
Okay.
Thank you,
I will
sir.
share you the link.
Right.
Please say the link.
I think the host can mute all of them. I am not able to mute. Kindly mute all of them. Hello? Can you mute all of them? So Bata is there, Professor Bata? Professor Bata? Admin is there? Anybody can help me? Ask them to mute all of them. Right. I think somebody is talking.
Sir, I will go to Bhatta's room and get it.
Yeah, done. Yeah.
You
Thank
carry on.
Carry on. Yeah. So I think to begin with, I want to tell you that your data analysis is based on your research objectives. So what is the research objectives? Your research objectives could be, I think it could warrant a multiple regression sometimes. Sometimes a time series regression sometimes. So all depend upon your objectives. I think that you would have seen in the morning, right? Identify the unit. What is your research unit is? It could be respond individuals. It could be students individuals. It could be salespeople. It could be doctors. Depend upon it. So you identify the unit of analysis. Okay. Remember that sometimes you will have two units of analysis. What is called as a multi-level analysis. Okay. Sometimes we collect data from the employee and the supervisor. So we have a two level we collect the data. So multi-level analysis. And somebody was talking to me. Yes, if you have a time series data, most often I think it's only a secondary data. When you go to the respondents, the primary data. All these are very basics. I think you know this. Okay. And remember, before collecting data, you have a plan. Write down the plan and keep it ready. What is the test you're going to? So don't do it after collecting data. So all the plan must be in hand before collecting data, right? And I was talking to you in the morning that and remember that if you want to have a contribution, and that contribution is going to be say is a moderator, for example, and that is a contribution. That is a novelty you have in a paper. Remember, if you have one novelty and proceeding the analysis or proceeding the data collection is always risky. If you say that I have only one novelty is moderator, getting that moderator correct during the analysis or getting a favorable results for the moderator, it's always very difficult. So what I'm suggesting to all of you, do not work on one contribution. Remember, we work on 2 or minimum 2. I think minimum 2 is also risky. You can have at least 3-4 contribution you work on the paper. If you feel all the 4 has come, you can show 2 and 2 you can put in different papers. That's what we do it. We don't give everything in one paper unless it is not possible, because even if for a A-star level paper, they are not interested for more contribution. Instead, they want to have more number of studies to substantiate these 2 contributions. They require 2 to 3 studies in a A-star paper, for example. So what I'm suggesting to all is, do not venture into paper with one moderation, because statistically you get the positive good result for moderation is our very rare chance, or I can say 70% chance you may not get the correct moderation result, and 30% chance you may get correct. So it is a very big risky if you play on the moderation. I also did a moderation of experience published in Journal of Business and Industrial Marketing. It's luck. I got it. I have not thought of it. This is one way of looking at our level. But if you go to a very seasoned researcher, and if you build your theories very strong, if you're very strong in your domain, you know what is the entire model plays around. You know how the causality moves from one after the other. If you're very clear on the domain and very clear on your model, then possibly your moderation, if whatever you put will come. So what I say, the model building perspective is very, very important in data. And if you have very good in model building, then most likely then you may get good data analysis result. So I'm putting in both pros and cons. Pros and cons, if you're little blind, then yeah, 70% chance will go out, only 30% success. If you're very thorough with your theory, then I can say some 80-90% you may go right, 10% failure. Right? So this is what I want to tell you. This, we always have some surprises. You can even capture the surprises, and then you can play, and you can play, and then you can really sell those surprises also, provided the surprises is a meaningful contribution, right? So sometimes you do have antecedent, but the antecedent is working as an antecedent as well as a moderator. Okay, fine. Then you have some bonus. What I found out, data collection. If you're very, very faithful in collecting data, you don't have to collect large number of data like 600, 700. Even a good amount is worthwhile. Say for example, what is that good? I'll tell you an example. Say I go to my friend. I say that this is the question. Kind of fill it up. And if he says that I am very busy, I won't be able to do now. I will do tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Don't force it. So it is, and then you collect the data in the beginning itself. For example, if somebody if you go to office, go in the morning at don't go at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock when the office is about to close. Collect the data as and when they are fresh. That is the understanding. Okay. Then if you do all these things, fine, definitely the results will be good at the end, right? Now there is another possibility. I don't know whether it happens to you. I think in my south, Tamil Nadu and down south away from Chennai, all people write their own set of questions. I don't think it will be a problem here. I think it seems to be very matured in research. They write their own questions. So then we tell them, do not do it. Continuously for every FDP we go there, do not write questions on your own. So use adopted scale. So you can make some adaptation in the adopted scale, but not wholesalely write on your own. So that is one more learning. So every scale is available. I think there is a book available. I forgot the name of the author. The marketing scale book is available. I think it's Neymar. Sorry, not Neymar. Netmeyer. Netmeyer is having a book called Handbook of Marketing Scales. Okay, there are a lot of scales available. You don't have to do any reinvention. You don't have to recreate anything. All things are available. Rarely we develop scales as and when there is no scale development. Okay, so I think all these people know. All of you know that you try to use maximum adopted scale. Rarely you develop scales. I have ventured into developing scales, and I found that it's very time consuming, very laborious. So if you want to have any short-term success, don't get into those kind of scale development. It's very time consuming, it's laborious, and then a lot of you need to study reliability, validity of different kinds. Then you have to have study 1, study 2, qualitative. So I think if somebody want to have quick result, do not venture into scale development, right? Take an adopted scale and do your research and complete, right? And the widely used statistical tool I was just mentioning, I understand in social science, I don't know about other domain, is SEM related techniques. In finance, I've seen time series regression, in general multiple regression. I've also seen ANOVA. Very rarely I have seen discriminant analysis. Very rarely I have seen conjoint analysis. Yes, to some papers I have seen. I have seen in place of discriminant analysis, I have seen many papers have what is called as logistic regression. Okay, so this is a 70–80% scenario. Majority of the scenario is this. So SEM, multiple regression, and then maybe I think ANOVA like techniques are said to be widely used, right? It takes time to change the my PPT, one slide to other slide. So any other question before it changes? Any questions on that? I think one more way I want to tell you to do research. There are, if you just go to Google Scholar, search for 2021 paper, 2020 and 2021 paper. Find out some scale development happened. Take out that as a variable. For example, I'll tell you. You may use as well. There is a scale available in 2017 called vaccine hesitancy scale. I think you understand the phenomena is happening. No, many people are having this vaccine hesitancy. That's a scale available. The scale is not built for COVID time. It is built for SARS 2017 SARS virus. Right? You remember, I want to tell you one more thing, that there is a scale available called COVID fear scale. That COVID fear scale has come, I think the paper is published in 2020. Now I think it's having more than 1,000 citations. Okay, so your study and anything, one advantage of COVID study is the chance of publication is high. One disadvantage, that you have to write your paper fast and so that it can get published soon. Okay, so if you do the paper after the COVID is over, the editor may not like it. So you have to write fast and do it. So there is a vaccine hesitancy scale and there is a COVID fear scale. So you look into generally when you have some free time, just look into the Google Scholar and see what are the scales developed. Okay, there's a scale developed in JCR, Journal of Consumer Research, called moderator. What is a moderator? Is not a statistical moderator. Moderator is somebody who don't want to do excess, who do only a little. They don't need much, they don't need less. They're moderate. They're moderators. So the scale available in JCR has been established, what is called as the moderator. So a lot of interesting things happens. So you can use that scale. So instead of doing anything, do not do anything on your own related to scales. Unless until you know little of the elements, the do's and don'ts of scale development.
So if we adopt a scale, we have to do the reliability test that is given. Do we also have to do the validity tests for the adopted skills?
You have to use both. You have to do both the tests, reliability and validity. Right now, again, there is one more point I want to tell you here. Experience. That there are people who can do what is called as a diary study. How many of you heard of diary study? Has there anybody heard of diary study? Our diary, every year we buy a diary, in the January month. You heard of diary study? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, one said yes. Yeah, good. So diary study, what we will do is, for example, we will collect every week, for example, one possibility. You can also do every month, every day also. They assume that I collect every week. So I cannot have 300 respondents every week. That's not practical. So what I'll do, I may have 50, 60. 50, 60, and I'll do 50, 60, and I collect every week. Say, for example, my study objective warrants that I have to do 6 weeks or 8 weeks. Then every week I go to the respondent, same respondent, I collect. Again, next week I go to him or her, I collect. Similarly for 6 to 8 weeks. So if I have 60 into 60 in 6 weeks, 60 to 360 response I got it. Cases I got it, right? 360 responses I got it. And I can do what is called as latent. I can do what is called the methodology is called longitudinal methodology. I can do what is called latent growth curve modeling. We shortly call that LGC, latent growth curve modeling. Right? Remember cross-sectional. Remember why I'm telling you giving exposure to all these things. The cross-sectional is becoming slowly to an end. Papers are the big papers, A star and A papers are not accepting your cross-sectional studies. So you require some variant. One such variant is a longitudinal research insight. In longitudinal research, one type is what is called as the diary study. You can do it weekly, you can do it. So why I want to club scales and diary study is that, say for example, a particular item has got, say, 6 questions. Say, I take the case of job satisfaction. I think the job satisfaction, you have 6 items, 6 questions. If I want to do a longitudinal study, I will only take 3 important items. I will remove or I will ignore the 3 other items. I hope you got it. Because the data analysis situation in latent growth curve modeling requires that. You can't have like cross-sectional design. You need to have limited. Limited in the sense I will pick up a key important questions. I will remove, even though a scale has got 6, I'll take only 3, for example. So I just want to connect scales and the methods. If I do a cross-sectional study, for example, then what I'll do, I'll take all the 6 questions. Because I in a cross-sectional study, I can do in SEM, ordinary SEM, it accommodates. And PLSM, it accommodates. But not possible with in case of in case of latent growth curve, which comes under the methodology called longitudinal research design. Any other question?
Sir, I have a question.
Okay.
That for longitudinal study, I need not go back to the same respondents, right?
No, you have to go. You have to go to the same respondent only. In a longitudinal,
can the
me.
description of the audience be same? For example, I had done a work from home study in the pre-COVID times,
okay,
just before pre-COVID,
okay,
for the millennials.
Okay.
That what is their attitude towards work from home, and
okay,
that data I already have. Now I want to repeat the same questionnaire
okay,
for another set of millennials.
Okay.
Both are millennials.
Okay.
And to understand whether because of COVID has the work from home perception changed.
Okay.
So, but I cannot reach back to the same people because I have, it was a convenient sampling done.
No, I see you can do a convenient sampling in a longitudinal distance. It's not an issue. But only condition is you have to have the same respondent. Suppose no, it all happens. I'm assuming that the respondent is not available due to some reason, migrated or died or whatever it is. Then what I will do is I will do a case-wise deletion. I'll remove the entire sample from my study. And if your scenario varies, if the scenario varies, for example, I collected a sample in one scenario, and the second sample collection, second data collection may happen after 2 or 3 months, some gap, and I do the second data collection. Okay. If both are same, but could be on a different samples. For example, I'm collecting for IT employees, I'm doing it for manufacturing employees, same model. I can think of a multi-group analysis. One group is IT, the other group is in manufacturing. I see whether the groups behave in same fashion or different.
Okay. Okay, fine.
Makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, I told you that I was in the process of creating scale. See the scale. I have published the scale called promotional support. So what is this promotional support? Is a support given to salespeople. For example, widely used in pharmaceutical, that they give a lot of compliments, samples. Not only in pharmaceutical, in industrial marketing as well. Many people gives Diwali speech. Many people, many company gives diaries, calendars. All these are, I consider them as a promotional support. Then we developed a scale, right? Remember, now again, I have a point here to all of you that these are formative scale. So when you pick up a scale, adopted scale, remember to note there you have to identify before whether your adopted scale is been developed as formative or developed as reflexive. You have to have that information before whether the scale you developed, scale you adopted from previous studies is a reflective measurement model or a formative measurement model. That is one thing I want to tell all of you. It's very important. If you do, what is the problem? If you do analysis which is meant for formative tool, the set of analysis is quite different from reflective measurement model. So the analysis is different. So when you take the adopted scale, read the particular article and see how it has been developed. Is it developed based on classical test theory? Then it is a reflective measurement model. If it has been developed as a formative, is a formative measurement model. So there are two scales available. Even if you adopt, don't be blind. Read the particular article where the scale is, scale development article, and find out whether it's a reflective or formative.
Is it something to do with reflective indicators and formative
Yeah,
indicators?
exactly. Same thing only I'm talking. Exactly, Indra. Remember one thing, knowing that the literature to an extent, we developed a scale. I also want to tell summarize subjective information that 95% of them are reflective scale. Only 5% of them are formative scales. Okay, there is an article available from JCR that many of the marketing scales has been misspecified. You know what is misspecified? It has to be formative, but it's been created, developed as reflective. I forgot the name of the paper. You put it. I think it is about Porsukov. Author name is Porsukov. Misspecification in, I think it comes in JCR. JCR is a widely recognized journal called Journal of Consumer Research. So you have to find out. I think the basic things you need to understand. Whenever you adopt scale, don't do it blindly. Think this is available. Rule out this whether my scale is reflective or a formative. Okay. I will show you what is the reflective scale and the formative scale. Some interesting example for MIS quarterly, Management Information System quarterly. I have, I think, a diagram. I think I'll show this diagram. I hope you can see that. You can
yes,
see
sir,
that?
it's visible.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Yes,
See the left side. Left side forming the construct. Right side. If I have this problem leading, so many of the scale on the right side, it is what is called as a reflective measurement model. And I want to again tell you that most of them, or 95% of them, is my subjective estimate, are only reflective measurement model. Okay, so what is that? No, I want to tell you that it's all depend upon how you conceptualize when you do a scale. How you theorize is more important. Okay. But again, there is a persons like method specialists like I think Jeffrey Edwards. Jeffrey Edwards says that you don't believe in a formative measurement model. But if you take a 1976 social economic scale, it says a person's socio-economic status is on 3 parameters or 3 indicators, reflective or formative, I'll tell you later. One is salary, is position, is academic qualification. That's one theory of social economic status. Okay, he says these three items forms the socio-economic status. And these 3 items are, he says, ideally should be a formative construct rather than a reflective construct. So don't think reflective, formative are big. After developing the scale, I understand this much. After spending 2 years, I understand this. Formative scales they have a different set of statistical tool to do it. So when you adopt anything scale, you see whether it is. It may be you may be unlucky that it could be a formative scale, and you will do all the PhD thesis as a reflective scale. So that's a blunder. So do not do. So just read it. And as I just told you, 95% of them are reflective. So you don't bother about much. But again, when you take it for a minute or just read the paper and understand whether it is reflective or formative. That is the point I want to make it. And don't think it's big formative, is big reflective. All depend upon how a particular a set of authors conceptualize. So this is a theoretical conceptualization. Okay. So see, the very simple example. Now you understand how this is reflective and what. This portion, the left side portion is formative, the right side portion is reflective. The middle one is the construct or the latent variable. The middle one. I can provide all the slides, so don't worry about it. This is available. I have taken this from a Chin article, which is available in which was available in MIS Quarterly for a very long time. I also developed.
Sir, could you just explain the formative and reflective with this example, please, if it's okay?
He says that no. So the mental. I thought it's very self-explanatory. That's why I didn't say anything. A person will get this kind of mental status, mental aberration. It comes because of the quantity of consumption of alcohol in terms of wine, in terms of beer, in terms of hard liquor. Okay, all this lead to the construct mental inebriation. Okay, but if a person has an inebriation, how he behaves, if you test him, he'll have a high blood level of the high level of alcohol in the blood is high. His driving ability goes down. Okay, his MRI scan, we do a functional MRI and see that what will happen. You can see certain changes in the brain, and his mental calculations also goes down. So you can also capture this particular construct as a formative as well as the reflective. Clear?
Okay,
what is formative means how an items leading the construct. Items are all given in rectangular boxes, and the construct is given in the oval shape. Okay, so how this influences. So what has happened here in a formative, the indicators influence the construct. The constructs lead to the indicators is the reflective. That is how you have to conceptualize the formative and the reflective. So I can able to bring this example in one particular example. So I have also developed. I will also show my work here. You can see here. See.
Sir, I just need an expert view from you, sir.
Okay.
Actually, one of my friends who worked in SEM, he told me like most editors, journal editors will only appreciate works conducted on this AMOS, which is fundamentally a reflective modeling platform. And they won't appreciate SM models that is done with using smart PLS.
Okay.
Where we can do both.
Okay.
So covariance-based methods are mostly appreciated by editors. That's what his comment was. Is that true, sir?
It's so 2 ways I can look at your question, Vishnu. One is if you look at the domain like say human resource domain, okay, the people acceptance of PLS are very low. If you look in the domain like say marketing, okay, the acceptance of PLS is high. For example, take the case of A grade journal accepts PLS in marketing, but not the case with human resource development. Okay. Now PLS, because of its wide level of marketing, the number of paper in general goes up. That's a general. Forget about domain specific. Right. Now the other thing, see, if you want to do a kind of theory confirmation, if you want to have kind of confirming your theory, or then the best one is the covariant based SEM is better. Like you can do that in Lisrel, you can do that in Amos, you can do that in M+, a lot of platforms available, softwares available, right? So I think if you are a very young researcher setting up your research, I think you better now start with Amos, because you'll not have much problem from the reviewers and the editors. If you are very seasoned, if you know how to write, then you can write. Why you're choosing a particular method. If you know how to write, then you can. Once you become a very seasoned researcher, then you can use PLS. PLS has got a role in exploratory research. Okay, if your research is very exploratory, then you can use PLS. If you want to confirm theory, then you can use Amos. Right? So
Just one more clarification, sir. I've seen people saying that it is easy to get the fit indices better in PLS, and it is hard to get all the fit indices in the required range if you are using with Amos.
Yes, you're right. Say, if you take the Amos, if you see the diagram, you will have error. Say, because when you capture data, you all have to remember, when you are capturing data, maybe with your closest friends, who's mentally very sound, even he's mentally very sound, he or she, you also collect his true score and as well as his error. So error are inevitable in research. Please understand that. So I can show that error variances if I do it in Amos. That is, error variants are not accounted for in PLS. This is one drawback of PLS. And as you rightly said, the fit indices like CFI, NFI, IFI, TFI, GFI, or AGFI, those fit indices are not available in PLS like it is available in. That's a disadvantage. Maybe it may develop. It has developed. I've been working for last 8 to 10 years. I can vouch and tell you that PLS based analysis are improving. Acceptance are increasing day after day. It keep increasing, as days go.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you. And one more thing I want to tell you: if you have a formative construct in your model, you build a model, and that model has one formative construct, then the model itself called as a formative model. I'll repeat it. You build a model, a good theory, spending 2 to 3 years, you build a model, and that model has one. Say, for example, you have 5 or 6 constructs, but in that one is formative, then the entire model is called formative model. So if you have a formative model in place in your research, you cannot use Amos. Okay, if you're very keen to know what is the reason is it will lead into an identification issues. That cannot be done. So what we will do, if you have a formative construct, you can royally use PLS. Because you cannot use covariant based SEM using Amos, Amos or Lisrel or M+. Okay, I think in our part of the world, Amos is very popular. Okay, so that is one thing I want to tell you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other question is there?
So just one thing, is this paper that you were talking about, in measurement model and the specifications, that paper 2003 paper by McKinsey and Jarvis?
Yeah, exactly. That's the Jarvis paper. Jarvis paper.
I'll just put the name. I think if
that's
others want to refer.
I think I remember. I think I saw it few days back.
No, sir, I've put it in the chat box.
Thank you. That paper has got that paper has got 6,000 citation. It also says, if you're very keen, it also says how to differentiate formative and reflective. I think even I have in my paper I have also referred this particular. It's a very good paper. I think you need to spend a lot of time. If you have one such paper in your lifetime, I think enough. It's such a lovely paper. Right. Now, No, I think as I mentioned, no, there is something called, in research, there are two things are very important. I also developed a scale before going into reliability and validity. I also go to a scale called a reflective scale. I have created the same promotional support as a reflective scale also. So the editor has a question. The editor asked me, why you want to create? The editor of this particular journal asked me that why you want to have a reflective, already formative scale is available. So which I need to answer. Okay. And this paper went on 5 reviews. The one good thing is each month I get a review. So I need to have 15-20 days to submit the review again a month. So it took almost 9 months to 1 year to complete this paper after submission. Okay, sometimes you are unlucky and sometimes you will be like this. So we have to bear with all this. So same concept. So point I want to tell you, I don't know much. Anybody have did like this? I have did like this. I've created as a formative construct. Same concept I've also created as a reflective scale and tested with a model. I think I have sent this in that packet. You can see that as Harindranath article, you can see that particular article. So I have put a lot of pain in creating this work, even though it's only, I think in ABDC, it's only a B category. So sometimes it happens like this also. Your work is not proportional to the publication, right? Right now I'll go to some more basics of data analysis. I hope you can see the slide. No, you can see the slide.
Yes, sir, we can.
Yeah.
See.
Now remember, your editor, your reviewer want to know the story of how you collected the data. Okay, I will tell you my story in order to you to understand that the story. What the reviewer wanted. The reviewer want that how the data has been collected, right? The reviewer is asking me how I collected the data. He wants that story. So what happened? I'll tell you my story in order to make you understand. I want to collect pharma sales representative as is my unit of analysis. I didn't do a multi-level. I only did as a frontline sales people. So I also told you what is the multi-level and the single level. I do a cross-sectional study. Yeah, in my domain, cross-sectional is very well accepted. If you are in a consumer behavior domain, they prefer to have experimental design most often, right? But in a sales domain, there are few journals available. They don't mind you collect you do a cross-sectional study. So I went from Chennai, I went to Trichy. So I didn't say the train and all. I just explained that there is a conference at Trichy, which is a town from Chennai. I went to Trichy. There is a medical representative union meeting went on. I went to the union meeting in the morning before the meeting starts. I circulated all the questionnaire. I also gave a pen as as a token of kind of a gesture. This is how I done. So this is the story. What I want to tell all of you, the story the editor reviewer want in a nutshell. Okay. Okay, that is what. So when you write a data analysis, don't write that no, I collected. You say what I did. Recently, we collected from Amazon Metra. We said that we have collected from Amazon Metra. We put 2 filters. One filter is Indian. The samples respondent must be an Indian. We also put another filter. That filter we also say that the next filter is or next level of segmentation is the Indian must be an IT employee. We have given a $0.25 for each respondent to Amazon Metric. So that will be given to the each respondent. So this story they want it. What is that you did it? That story, which makes like a talk, like a discussion. They want it, right? So do not write abruptly. They want how a data collection is being done, right? Remember, all our research based on classical test theory. If you go to the paper of a book of Lord and Novick, 1966, our research is based on that, which means we are, since your MBA days, since your post-graduation days, we are behind Cronbach alpha. We develop a questionnaire and see what is the Cronbach alpha, right? So in other words, the classical test theory says there are 2 pillars, and that 2 pillars is reliability and validity. That is the 2 pillars of research. Wherever you go, the 2 pillars of research is reliability and validity. Now you say a different approach. Now people are says that not classical test theory is now outdated, has some issues. They move to item response theory. Okay, so remember that people are now getting well versed with item response theory. People at IIT, I don't know which IIT, they have a course on item response theory. So I also want to sensitize. It is not just classical test theory. You also have something beyond what is developing, what is called as the item response theory, right? So reliability and validity have come from classical test theory of 1966. Okay, as I just mentioned, this slide again, I think repeated here. You have to check whether it's reflective or a formative measurement scale whenever you adopt scales. Whenever there is formative scale in a model, I have also told you that if one formative construct in a model of 10 constructs, then you can call the model as formative model. Okay, it is done by see the citation. Okay, you can estimate if you can rightly write as a defense that I have a particular construct, one construct in my model is formative. That is the reason I use a PLS. So you have a way to defend your PLS. As somebody told me that a PLS has an issue. Yeah, is very true. Okay, there is a difference. If you do a PLSM, the analysis is different. Okay, if you do a covariance based sum, that Amos is covariance based sum. Okay, then the analysis pattern is different. The analysis results are different. For example, in case of PLS, I will have a T statistics, I will have beta. I don't have much fit indices. Where in case of Amos, I'll have beta, T statistics. I'll also have many fit indices like C minimum, RMSE, RMR. A lot of ways the robustic ways are available to find out how the data behaves in fitting the model. Okay. So now we are in the stage of we have collected the data and the theory is already developed. So whether the data and the theory are compatible, those results, whether it is compatible or not, are given by fit indices like C minimum, DF, SRMR, RMSE. And those who work in Amos, they will understand this, right? Any question, then I'll forward. I don't know, because it's a heterogeneous crowd. Something I would have created some downs in some minds. So I just want to know. Any questions here, or can I go further? Any question?
So can you explain the last part, the data and the theory?
Okay, now see, now the program is today, I think starts on Monday. Today is Wednesday. So I hope, seeing the length of the program, 5 days, now we are in the data analysis stage. Assume that last 2.5 days or 2 days or 3 days, you are in the theory development. Now we are in a stage, today's session, or today at this point of time, I am very eager to know whether the theory developed and the data analysis are compatible or not compatible. Compatible means that then my NIF values, NFI values, GFI values, CFI value, RMS value in SEM. Or if I am doing in a multiple regression, the beta must be coefficient, the F statistics must be significant. So I want to know if those things are correct, then my data and the theory developed are compatible, are really go hand in hand. If you ask me which is important, the theory building is important. Theory, if you do a right theory building and then with proper measures, then your analysis becomes easy. Okay, so what is the meaning? What is the meaning? I have made a mistake. I want to tell you that I am very crazy of these techniques. I am very crazy of these techniques, statistical technique. I don't know what is the reason. I've been spending 1.5 hours on statistical techniques. Then I was taking a lot of FDP on SEM techniques. And at one point of time, I started myself, oh, I am to teach all these people. Then I thought I should develop some metrics. So I went on creating a paper called SEM. I think it's called as, I think I have here. Yeah, you can see here. I'll put it here. So I have created what is called as a Bayesian statistics. How to use a Bayesian structural regression modeling for management researchers. Okay. So I don't know where I started. I forgot. So what I say is, your theory and the data should come in place and place to place. It should be very compatible. That is what this particular slide also says. The first one I put it here: the data analysis and the theory development, theory testing. And if you ask me anybody, so yeah. So the point I want to make: do not spend much time on data analysis. Okay, data analysis. What you should spend time on theory building. That is really a crux. That's really a difficult place. Data analysis, I know 100 numbers of that's why I don't want to teach you how to do SL, because 100 number of videos are available on YouTube. You can learn that. But what I want to tell you, what is my practical experience in data analysis, right? So if you ask me which is the better one, the big one you have to focus is on theory building. What is the theory building? Yeah, if I break them into pieces, you need to have good literature knowledge. You should review the literature. You should also know who is the top author in the domain. Whenever he writes any article, you should get a Google Scholar alert. So that is how you build. You should know all the latest development in your domain. Now remember, one more thing in data analysis: methodology like experimental design is still alive. Now people are telling. I met American professor. Hello.
Regulator తీసుకున్నారు లేదా అని ఉన్నా మీ దగ్గర?
People are kind enough to give me a break.
ఏం లేదు, ఒకటి మనకి పని చేయట్లేదు ఒకటి, అందుకని కావాలి. అయితే మీరు ఇటువైపు వస్తానులే, నేను బయటికి రావాలి ఇప్పుడు. ఇప్పుడు రాను, కొద్దిగా లోన్ చేసి వస్తాను.
ఓకే,
అయితే అదే మీకు కాల్ చేస్తాను. అయితే ఎక్కడున్నాగా నాకు కొంచెం ఇచ్చేయండి. అయితే మళ్ళీ కొంటాను నేను, అందుకని మీరు ఆల్రెడీ తీసుకున్నారు కదా, మీరు చెప్పాను అందుకని. ఓకే, షూర్ థ్యాంక్ యూ.
Right. I forgot where I left. Okay, so theory building is important. So now I think if you look, this is how the diagram contains, SEM diagram contains. You have an arrow, you have a latent variable, you have observed variable, error terms. All these are measured. These are all have some specification, right? Latent variable can be always represented with the help of a circle or an oval shape. Any observed variable, for example, if you collect your experience as I told in the morning, if you collect as number of years as experience, and then I can use that experience as an observed variable. If I collect job satisfaction as a 5 with 5 indicators, then it is a construct or a latent variable. Okay, the other name for construct is latent variable. If you have if you want to correlate between two constructs, there's a covariance arrow, which is a two-sided arrow, it's got a two-edge arrows. Okay, and you also have a error terms if you are dealing with AMOS. If you are dealing with PLS, there is no error term. So errors are not captured separately in PLS. Error variants are not captured separately in PLS. Right. Now, sometimes what we'll do, when you want to use as a moderator, and let's say, for example, and that particular moderator is a latent variable, you can have a composite score, which means, for example, there are 5 items or 5 questions available for a construct, and then I want to use it as observed variable. Take an average of all these things. It's called, you can take an average or a sum. For example, sometimes you want to use it as a moderator. Sometimes if you want to use in process macro, for example, you want to use process macro. I will open that process macro maybe tomorrow, maybe next class. If I want to use a process macro, I need to take an average. Okay, so there is something called average. You can also take a sum, right? Yeah, there are 3 types we mentioned in the morning. There are 3 types. So one is yes, sir.
Hari?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Hello, Professor Hari?
Yes, sir.
Just a caution that you are left last 10 minutes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm having a look at my clock. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Professor.
Okay.
Professor, kindly mute all of them, Professor, if you don't mind.
I think in spite of my doing it,
I think few people
They-
like
they keep it-
Anand Kumar, for example, I think, yeah.
I'll remove him. I'll completely remove him.
I don't know, Professor.
Okay.
Time being
Okay,
mute
carry
all of
on,
them.
only left, yeah.
Yes, okay. So there are 3 types of SEM covariance base, okay. Partial least square, the other one. It is also called partial least, it's also called as variance based SEM, partial least square. You also know there's one more category of statistics is getting popular. I think I take this forum to tell you that there is a method is getting slowly popular. There is a proof also, I'll tell you. The recent 26th version of SPSS has introduced a section called Bayesian statistics. If you look at the version 26 SPSS, there is a place available for Bayesian statistics. I want to tell you all the researchers here, not very far, we will all go to Bayesian statistics. We will have to slowly really get into what is a Bayesian thinking, Bayesian level of. I put it very simple, very simple terms. So you have an arithmetic mean or a mean now. Very shortly, you can have a Bayesian mean, Bayesian standard deviation, Bayesian SEM, Bayesian factor analysis. So it is really knocking our door. Bayesian statistics are knocking our door. Many marketing top level papers, particularly in marketing science and journal of marketing, the extent I know in my domain, they all have started widely using Bayesian statistics. So in SEM type, we also have Bayesian statistics. Now, what is the advantage of Bayesian statistics? You can use any number of even if the data is ordinal or categorical, you can use Bayesian SEM. Not necessarily your data has to be a Likert scale or interval or a ratio scale data. Not necessary, right? Now I can tell you, say for example, I have a mean. All of them are faculties here, I hope, or maybe one or few as a scientist. If you are a faculty and assume that a new student join, okay, then assume that you find out using Bayesian mean that you find out that the average height of my students, let's say 5.7. Okay, so 95% probability, the confidence interval level, I say that the students in my class, 95% probability level, or 99% confidence interval level, I will say that my students at 5.7 is the height. Assume on a morning you go to the class, you find a new admission student walks in. You don't have you don't have a kind of a measurement tape to measure his height. But Bayesian inference says that 99% possibility that particular student walks in is also going to be 5.75. So remember that our human mind thinks in terms of Bayesian. So in a forum like this, if I don't introduce the 17th century Bayesian, I think a priest in a church want to identify, what is that possible, how possible death rate and other things. We find out the Bayesian theorem. It's been widely used. I'm telling you, you're already using it. When you compute using Amos, there's something called BIC, Bayesian, I think AIC, BIC value comes. All these are on the basis of Bayesian statistics. You're already using it. Now there's going to be much more use of Bayesian statistics. Usage is going to be wide in the future. Okay. The next one. Next, I'll go to the what is called as reliability and validity. So now, if you have time, download the latest SPSS trial version and see there is a Bayesian statistics. And now you can run a Bayesian one-way ANOVA. Bayesian t-test is available. So you are now taking a different level in statistics. We have two schools of in statistics. One is the Bayesian school. The other is the Fisher school. what we call them as the conventional statistics versus Bayesian statistics, right? So this is one more information I want to give you as a practitioner, in Bayesian and data analysis. Now see this, the circles are, see those circles, they are very interesting. Sometimes those images gives you wonderful explanation of the concept and then definition. See this particular, sometimes the scales are very reliable but not valid. So when you get into the scale development procedure, your scale has to be reliable as well as valid. Okay. See the first one, it is reliable but not valid. Okay. See the second one, it is not at all. It is not. It's scattered out, so it is not reliable, not reliable. Valid may be extent because it covers. Validity is to the extent is good. Here, both of them are not there because you see the second one, the spread is almost a kind of pattern is there. So you say it's valid but not reliable because the dots are not in one place. See the third one, third circle, a third visual. You can see the third one, it is the bottom off is completely left and only the top off. So it is neither reliable nor valid. The last one you can see it is both reliable and valid. So again, all our research, what we do is based on classical test theory, and that asks for reliability and validity. And somebody was asking me, even for established scale, we give them the scale during the scale development paper. We give them the initial stage of the alpha. We'll ask you, when you adopt the scale, you need to test again in your study what is the alpha, Cronbach alpha. Now there is another story building up, all of you. Now many a times you also see Cronbach alpha, not just Cronbach alpha. You also see what is called as composite reliability, not just composite reliability. There is something called, now a person by name Dillon has discovered, Dillon, I forgot the other name, Dillon-Rowe. It also, all the three, Cronbach alpha, composite reliability, Dillon-Rowe, all these are measures of reliability. What is the measure of reliability? I think I'll go back to the old example. You go to a weighing machine, and every day it gives a different reading. For example, today my weight is 65. Tomorrow it says that it's of 71. Next day it says 61. Then the machine is not reliable. So you need to stop going to that machine. Okay. Instead, the machine says today 65, tomorrow 66, 64, 64.5. My weight is, then I can say that particular machine is reliable. I think I have taken most of your time. I have a lot of stories to tell you. All these are reliable, and all these are really what happened in the domain of data analysis. I think I'll stop now. It is 1:16. I'll continue the story on data analysis on a conceptual platform. If somebody wants a specific, like I told you that I will show you AMOS, how to do this Mardias coefficient. I will also show you where it is available so that you can pick up that. So I'm trying to teach you on a conceptual level. If you want to bring down to a data analysis level, yes, welcome. I have no issues. You are my scholars at different age group. I'm here to help you in whatever way possible. So your feedback is required for my next session. Is it okay for all of you, or you want to lift, or you want to come down a level? What do you want, please? I think you're all in a hurry for lunch.
While they are telling, thank you for showing this reliability and validity diagram.
Okay, sir.
Actually planning to include in my this one because of time. I did not, because this bull diagram is regularly used by showing this.
Exactly, Professor. Yeah, that's the easy way to make them understand also. Okay.
Yeah, bull diagram is very, very common.
Very common.
So
all audience, is it okay? I'm not saying yes or no.
Yes,
Yes, sir. Definitely, sir.
You're happy with that level?
you don't have energy to talk, lift your hand.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Sir, then I leave up for lunch.
Sir, can we have your email ID, sir?
See, I'm coming again. I'm coming again. And I have sent a mail to all of you. I have given the email ID and my mobile number also.
Okay, sir.
Okay, I'll come back.
Okay.
I'll come back. I'll
Thank you,
start
sir.
the same story. Enjoy the story. Yeah, stories are
Yes,
very
sir.
important.
Looking forward, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
The
you, sir.
sessions were very informative, sir. We
Professor
are really
Harry,
looking
thank
forward
you
for the
much for
continuous
the
session.
Thank you.
wonderful
Thank you.
session.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
we will continue at 2:15. Every participant, Asrar will come and talk about SPSS. So all your questions, keep it ready. I think he has sent some pre-work also to all of you. So please be ready. Have a very, very good lunch, but not so much that you will sleep. Okay. Thank you so much,
Okay,
every one of you. Please take care of yourself. We'll meet back at 2:15. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
God
you, sir.
bless
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank
You
you.
can keep login, but keep your mutes on.
Okay.
Thank you, Hari. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.